Hey, this is Miss Cooper, and we're here with the review information from 9 through 16. Same paper. I know it's really small, but we're just going to kind of zoom through this so that you can be clear on everything. So after we ended World War I in Chapter 8, we went into the Great Depression in Chapter 9, and we talked about Franklin D. Roosevelt and his New Deal policies. That was his domestic policy for the United States going through the Great Depression. But the stock market crashed in 1929, and that kind of has a ripple effect to other markets in the world. Um, there is the development of the Nazi Party, okay, that comes up, and that the Nazi Party hires a lot of men in Germany who were looking for work, who needed to provide for their families. The entire world was experiencing the effects of the Great Depression. And Germany had been specifically hit hard because the Treaty of Versailles was so harsh towards them that they were a struggling country. And Adolf Hitler rises to power. He's a great speaker, he's charismatic, and he gets people to like him, and he introduces programs that are beneficial. So people get with him and they support his work, and the Nazi Party becomes extremely powerful to the point, by the time the Reichstag or the Third Reich, and, by the time they're like running the entire country, the Holocaust is getting underway. So, very, very bad uh, situation in Germany. So that's that. The authoritarian style of governing is tyrannical, is authoritative, it's dictatorial. So when you hear these words about authoritarian, we're kind of talking about having a lot of authority, and you better listen to me or I'll kill you type of stuff. And that's what was pretty much happening. If you didn't agree with the tactics or the policies coming down the line from the Nazi Party, there were terrorist attacks and all types of things. The Night of the Broken Glass, which was called Kristallnacht, definitely just a way to tell the Jews, we don't like you, and we're going to kill all of you, and we're going to pretty much destroy your lives. And that's bad. That's not a good thing to do, and it was being done. So, and there's propaganda that comes from the Nazi Party as well to get public opinion to be persuaded to believe that these are people that you should hate. And that's what propaganda can do, persuade you to hate certain people. Then there are pieces of legislation that are important. Okay, the Emergency Banking Relief Bill bailed out the banks. The National Industrial Recovery Act helped out industries. The Agricultural Adjustment Act helped out farmers. The Black Cabinet was actually a group of people assembled by Eleanor Roosevelt, who is the wife of Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Emergency Relief Appropriation Act is another piece of legislation that gives emergency relief. Social Security Act helped old age people who were senior citizens or the older aged populations. That's where the Social Security Act comes from, and that's who it was meant to help. The Indian Reorganization Act kind of gives tribal governments different authorities and restructures the agreements that have been established for tribes, Indian tribes that are still in the United States. The Tennessee Valley Authority got a lot of people jobs. Okay, TVA, that's to the utility companies. So that was a program under Franklin Roosevelt to try to work with infrastructure and energy. The Scottsboro Boys, very, very sad case. So the reason that that's on here is because in spite of everything that was going on during the Great Depression, everyone is struggling financially. People are losing their homes, their jobs. Dust storms are raging across the Great Plains. It is a terrible time in the United States and in many parts of the world. And I try my best to make things in the world history class line up as close as possible with your U.S. history class that you'll have to graduate as well. So you'll see me do that in many occasions. I'm trying to kind of hammer in on things that are going on in the United States. Even though this is a world history class, we're looking at the whole context. I do want you to be aware some of these domestic policies in the United States, because you will hear about them again. There's something in your notes about the Hawley Smoot tariff. A tariff is a tax, so I want to make sure that you go back and look for the Hawley Smoot tariff. Chapter 10, we talked about the Mexican Revolution. There's a document about that. There is a lot in that document. Be sure to go back to that, unpack that, so that you're clear on somebody's president for like 7 times, and they don't want to be they say they don't want to be president again, but then next thing you know, somebody else runs for president, and they get that person put in jail so they can be president again, and then somebody gets mad about that, and there's a series of leadership struggles. Think about the Ottoman Empire, okay? There were 3 things that helped them decline. We know we had the leader, the really good leader, Suleiman. When he dies, things begin to decline. But the decline begins with that power struggle, the structure, and who's going to be next, and who's in charge, and all those types of arguments. They're not helpful. They've not been helpful in the past. They're usually not helpful in the present. And we can learn something from the past. We can learn what not to do in the future. That's what we should learn from history. The independent nations in Africa. Africa begins to try its best to expel Europeans who had come for imperialistic endeavors, coming in trying to get stuff, coming in trying to take stuff, coming in trying to take away their rights. There were so many negative things. Apartheid, by all means, and I'm going to put a video in your notes to make sure you have some information about apartheid, because I know that's not something that I think we spent enough time talking about. And Nelson Mandela and what he did in South Africa. So we want to be sure I'm going to be sure to get you some information about that. Then there are religions in Asia, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam. They're kind of conflicting with each other at that point in time, which causes some instability in Asia. Chapter 11 brings us into World War II. And so we talk about Germany sending troops to the Rhineland when they weren't supposed to have a military. Germany annexed Austria, and they weren't even supposed to have annexed power. They lost territory. They weren't supposed to gain any territory. They weren't supposed to forcibly take territory. They're not supposed to be marching. They're not supposed to have a bullet. And they're doing all these things. Then in Asia, because we just got through talking about the instability in Asia, there's Japan declares war on China first. And because of that, America embargoes Japan. They put an embargo on a very specific product. I want to say it was oil. And that makes Japan upset because they see that as a censoring of their activities in Asia, and they think that America should mind their business and stop censoring anything that they do in Asia. They still do that today. They don't want to be told what to do in their region. And I don't think that that's too hard to understand, how people think that you shouldn't be in their region. So anyway, the facts here discuss that Japan declared war on China. The United States put an embargo on Japan, and then Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. So we get into World War II because of that attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. The Germans were not happy about the war. A lot was going on in Germany at that time. The Holocaust specifically, which was a genocide. A genocide is a mass extinction of a certain group of people or race. There were death camps. There were concentration camps. But eventually all of this goes south, and the Germans surrender. They try to attack Russia. They did attack Russia. Russia and Germany had signed an agreement to say that they wouldn't attack each other. Hitler was there talking to Stalin about we're going to be friends and we're not going to attack each other. And about a year or 2 years later, here he comes, attacks Russia. Just comes and attacks Russia after you just said you wouldn't do that. So, yeah, really bad situation. But anyway, it ends with Germany surrendering. Japan surrenders. The war ends. Treaty of Versailles, Part 2. The United Nations is formed. The League of Nations was the peacekeeping organization at the end of World War I. People didn't feel very comfortable with the way it was structured. So by the time we end World War II, they revamped the League of Nations and they call it the United Nations. And we still have the UN today. Chapter 12 talked about the Cold War. Awesome chapter. A lot of information here to unpack. So please go back to your notes on chapter 12 because you'll hear about Korea. You'll hear about Vietnam. You hear about what's going on in China, okay? There are a lot of things going on with the Cold War. And the Cold War is not one war. It is a series of campaigns, all to contain communism. That is exactly the best way to summarize what is the Cold War. It is this series, it's a time period, okay, and it's a series of campaigns, as in they have money, financial packages. They give the Marshall Plan, they give the Truman Doctrine. Both of those were financial packages. The Truman Doctrine, which is important for you to know, the Truman Doctrine specified money to go to Turkey and Greece so that they would not become communists. The Marshall Plan specified money to go to European countries that had been bombed and had gone through, terrible things during World War II to recover so that they would not become communists. So that was the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan. Then the Cuban Missile Crisis happens, and this was another reason why we were concerned about people becoming communists, because we didn't want them to think that they should attack us. Okay, so Cuba. United States decides to help Cuba. John F. Kennedy was the president at that time, and they assist in Fidel Castro becoming the president or the leader, in Cuba. And under great certainty, they said, well, he's not communist. He said he wasn't communist. He said he didn't have any communist ties. And as soon as we get him elected, he becomes communist. Or he was already communist, or he was always communist. And we look sideways and say, what? But we kind of fell back, tried to get him out. The Bay of Pigs was a failure. We tried, that was a coup. In other words, an attempted overthrow of Fidel Castro. It did not work. And then there is the Cuban Missile Crisis. Russia has literally encouraged Fidel Castro to place nuclear warheads, okay? Missiles, pretty much, okay, right there in Cuba. Not just there, but pointing directly at Miami, Florida. And that looked really, suspicious. So, yeah, we were kind of upset about that. Now, that brought us close to a nuclear war, the closest that we had come or have come in history. And it was de-escalated. Thank goodness it was de-escalated. So then there's Mao Zedong still in China. The China Revolution ended with the Communist Party being the main ruling power in China. They have an isolationist policy. They don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to be around anybody, and it's just them. It's and North Korea is communist. Cuba was communist. Yeah, that's the major pieces right there. So chapter 13 talked about Shaka Zulu. Go and read your notes on Shaka Zulu. And I'm going to send you a good video about Shaka Zulu too, because I didn't send you enough videos. The Boer War. These are white people fighting white people in Africa. There were the English and there were the Dutch. And I think the Dutch were there first. I think the Dutch were called the Boers or Boers. It could be Boer. I keep saying Boer, but I think it's Boer. Either way, Boer. Okay? These were white people who were fighting other white people in Africa over who should have the most influence. And it was weird. Okay, so yeah, the Boer War. Shaka Zulu, on the other hand, was trying to expel all Europeans from that whole area and did a pretty good job for about 50 years. And, then they say he went crazy. They say he was practicing voodoo and witchcraft. And I don't know. All I can say is I'm gonna send you a video, and you can determine for yourself what do you think about Shaka Zulu. Chapter 14 talked about the European Economic Community. This is the beginning of the Euro, okay, the EU. So I don't know. It's like this is another name for England. Are they changing their name again? It's not just England, because England has been England. England has been Great Britain. England's been the UK. So it's like, do y'all know what your name is? Okay, and most of that is because they keep acquiring new territory. They got Scotland. They got Wales. They got, they kept doing all that kind of stuff. So that's where the name changes came from. So now there's this European Economic Community that they established their own currency and all that. Nikita Khrushchev is in Russia at this time, and we're still in the effects of the Cold War. We're dealing with Russia as this party that we don't want to deal with them. We don't want to have anything to do with. When Stalin was still there, he was hard-nosed, he was dogmatic, and it was like, no, nothing's happening. And then as the leadership changes, when we get to Khrushchev all the way down to Brezhnev, coming down, even there's a few more people in there, but when we get to Gorbachev, Khrushchev, tomato, but you can see the spelling there. And feel free to use your cell phone and Google a pronunciation for any of these words so that you can hear the multiple ways that they are pronounced. But anyway, those are Russian leaders. Brezhnev and Khrushchev are Russian leaders, and each more liberal than the predecessor, all the way to Gorbachev. When we get to Gorbachev, the Soviet Union collapses, and it internally dissolves, and now then you have in these independent states in Russia. Chapter 15 talks about Gorbachev and the leaders of North Korea, Kim Jong II, Kim Jong Un, Kim Il Sung. Okay, so Kim Jong Un is who's in power now. Kim Jong II, I want to say was the person after the first. So this first person is Kim Il Sung. Okay, or I think that's how it's said. Anyway, you can look that up too. So chapter 16 talks about the rise of ISIS. Okay, and the euro. So yeah, there's some notes about all that. The maps that you should be studying are Turkey, Russia, Mexico, Germany, Iran, Iraq, Greece, China, Argentina, um, and the world. Study. I mean, this was a world history class, so I really hope that you could at least look at a world map and be able to identify the 7 continents, be able to identify the countries that we have discussed. I would hope that you can at least locate them and have some proximity or some recollection of their proximity to certain bodies of water, like which one is over here by the Pacific Ocean, which one is over here by the Atlantic Ocean. That will help you in the future if you should have to travel or become, a person that needs to work in different parts of the world. It's good to know, where these countries are in connection to where's the body of water. Okay, that's kind of a good way to help you know where it is. Okay, that's by the Pacific Ocean. Okay, that's by the Mississippi River. And, if you're in the United States, you want to go by the big river systems. But if you're in the world, you want to think about the oceans. That's the Indian Ocean, or that's kind of how you can help yourself. Okay, this has gone on long enough. Please just write 5 facts, and I'm going to send a series of other videos between all next week. Okay, you won't get anything for tomorrow. This will be the only video you need to digest today because it's really long. So be sure that you make sure you understand how to do your essay. If you have questions about your essay, email me those questions. I talked about it on yesterday. Make sure you have all of your notes. If there are notes that you don't know where they are, you can email me and I can tag you in the Teams page as to exactly where they are, where you can pull those documents down, okay? So do what you need to do to get yourself prepared, and I will be speaking to you through video as well as sending a few other videos. This will be my last review video for you, but I will be sending things on the things that I don't feel like we had enough clarity on. Like, I know we didn't talk enough about Shaka Zulu. I know we didn't talk enough about the European Union. We didn't talk enough about Korea. I sent notes, but we didn't have videos. So this week I'm going to send those videos to make sure that you have some clarity. Okay? So thank you for being here. Peace and love.